When my daughter-in-law told me they got married yesterday, without telling me, I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. That sentence kept echoing in my mind like a haunting melody. It was late afternoon, the soft glow of the setting sun spilling through the lace curtains in the kitchen. I was drying the last plate after dinner, the smell of garlic and rosemary still clinging to the air when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Lena, my daughter-in-law. "We got married yesterday. Sorry I didn't tell you." Just 6 simple words, but they hit me harder than anything I had expected. Yesterday? How could they have kept something so important from me? From us? I felt a cold ache settle in my chest. For years, I thought I had a good relationship with my son, Caleb. We were close, or at least I believed so. Sunday dinners, shared holidays, birthday cakes with candles. Lena was part of our little family routine, though she was quieter. Always a little reserved. I thought maybe she just wasn't a very open person. But this secret marriage, it felt like a betrayal of all those years of pretending everything was normal. I dropped the dishcloth and gripped the edge of the counter. The kitchen suddenly felt smaller, suffocating. My heart was pounding, not with anger, but shock. The silence around me was heavy. The ticking clock on the wall seemed to scream every second I had missed. How many times had I seen Lena recently? Laughing softly or avoiding my gaze, never hinting at this. How many times had I hugged Caleb, unaware of this secret between them? I tried calling Caleb immediately. The call went straight to voicemail. I left a trembling message. "Caleb, please call me back. We need to talk." But I knew he wouldn't call right away, not until he was ready to say whatever he wanted. I stood there for a long time, the house growing quiet and still around me. Outside, the breeze rustled the maple leaves, a familiar sound. But that day, it felt different, like it was carrying away something I wasn't ready to lose. Before this message, life felt steady. Not perfect, but steady enough. Caleb was my pride, kind-hearted, thoughtful, with a smile that could light up a room. We had our Sunday dinners, sometimes watching old movies while Lena sat quietly beside him, knitting or reading. Our house smelled like fresh bread and brewing coffee in the mornings. Sounds of laughter and clinking cups filling the air. Lena was always a little distant, yes. She never really opened up much about her past or her family. Sometimes I felt a little sting from that, but I told myself she was just shy or cautious. Caleb always smoothed things over, trying to keep the peace when small tensions bubbled up between us. The weeks leading up to the message felt like any other fall. I remember the scent of rain on the pavement, Caleb's quiet humming as he brewed coffee, and the soft crackle of the fireplace in the evenings. One night, we all watched a comedy, Caleb's laughter filling the room, Lena leaning against him. I thought those moments were enough warmth, enough family, but something had shifted beneath the surface. I just hadn't noticed. The first sign was subtle. Lena started answering my calls later and later, her replies growing shorter, colder. One afternoon, I stopped by unexpectedly, only to find the door locked and no answer despite hearing noises inside. That wasn't like her, always polite, always welcoming. A chill ran down my spine. Then, at the grocery store, a neighbor casually mentioned seeing Caleb and Lena at the courthouse a couple of days ago, quietly married. My throat went dry. Married? Why hadn't I been told? Why wasn't I invited? Even for a simple phone call. When I gently asked Caleb, he avoided my eyes, muttering something about wanting privacy, about it being their decision alone. I wanted to understand, to respect their wishes, but the silence between us felt like a widening gulf. That night, I sat alone in the living room. The soft hum of the heater was the only sound in the quiet house. I remembered how Caleb used to call me Mom with such warmth, how he would seek my advice on everything from job troubles to friendships. Now, he barely looked at me. I thought about Lena, the polite daughter-in-law who had suddenly become a stranger, secretive and distant. Was this marriage a way for her to protect herself? Or was it a deeper rebellion? A sign that they had already shut me out. The truth was tangled, like the dry autumn leaves outside, and I was left searching for answers in a house that suddenly felt unfamiliar. The days after that message felt like walking through fog. I went about my routines, making breakfast, tidying up, watering the plants on the porch, but everything felt muted, as if the colors in my world had faded. The house was quieter now. Caleb and Lena weren't sharing meals with me as often, and when we did sit together, there was an awkwardness that no one dared to break. I tried to hold on to hope, reminding myself that maybe this was just a phase, that eventually they would come around and include me again. But deep down, the unease gnawed at me. One afternoon, I decided to visit Lena at her job, a small flower shop downtown. Maybe seeing her in her element would remind me that she was still part of the family. When I walked in, the scent of fresh lilies and roses filled the air. Lena was arranging bouquets, her hands gentle but practiced. She looked up, surprised but not exactly pleased to see me. "Hi," Mrs. Walters, she said, her voice polite but cool. I could feel the distance between us like a wall. I just wanted to see how you're doing, I said softly, trying to bridge the gap. Maybe talk about everything. She hesitated, then nodded. I think we need to be honest with each other. There's been a lot you don't know. Her words hit me harder than I expected. Like what? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She sighed and looked down at her hands. Caleb and I kept the wedding private because of the tension in the family, and because of things I didn't think you would accept. I blinked, my heart beating faster. What could she possibly mean? Secrets? Lies? Betrayal? That evening, I sat down with Caleb. It was the first time in weeks we had a real conversation. Face to face. No screens. No hurried messages. I don't understand why you didn't tell me about the wedding, I said, my voice cracking. I'm your mother. I should have known. We should have celebrated together. He looked tired, worn down by months of silence. Mom, it wasn't about keeping you out. It was about protecting Lena. There's a lot going on with her family, things she's not ready to share. He paused, then added, I wanted you to meet her parents first. And when that happened, we thought it might be better to tell you all at once. I nodded slowly, feeling the weight of his words. But the hurt was still there. It was the feeling of being left behind, like I wasn't part of their world anymore. As days passed, the tension didn't ease. I found myself replaying every moment I'd spent with Lena, every quiet dinner, every polite smile, and wondering what else I had missed. The warmth in the house felt like a memory. Then, one evening, a package arrived at my door. Inside was a photo album, filled with pictures from their wedding day, just Caleb and Lena, smiling in a small garden, surrounded by close friends. No family. Attached was a note in Lena's handwriting. I hope one day you'll understand why we had to keep this private. We love you both. I held the album close, tears welling up. I realized that beneath all the hurt was a hope for acceptance, for healing. The days that followed the arrival of that photo album felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, caught between the urge to fall into despair and the need to find solid ground. I flipped through the pictures again and again, studying the smiles frozen in time, searching for a clue I hadn't seen before. Caleb and Lena looked happy, truly happy, and that made the ache in my chest twist even tighter. I realized then that this secret wedding wasn't just about excluding me. It was about something deeper, something I hadn't understood yet. One chilly Sunday afternoon, I found myself sitting on the front porch, watching the leaves swirl in the wind. My mind was restless, spinning back to a conversation I'd had months ago with Lena, a conversation I had pushed aside because I didn't want to face what it might mean. She had mentioned, in a rare moment of openness, that her family had been difficult, that she had reasons to be guarded, reasons to keep parts of her life hidden. At the time, I thought she was just shy, maybe scared of judgment. But now, I wondered if there was more secrets, perhaps, or wounds we hadn't healed. I decided I needed to talk to her again. Not as a mother-in-law scorned or betrayed, but as a woman who wanted to understand. I called Lena and asked if she could meet me for coffee. She agreed, though I could hear the hesitation in her voice. We met at a small cafe downtown, the kind with mismatched chairs and the rich scent of roasted beans in the air. She arrived a little late, her cheeks flushed from the cold. As we sat across from each other, the noise of the cafe faded away. Lena looked at me, eyes tired, but steady. I want to be honest with you, she said quietly. My family, it's complicated. There are things about my past I was afraid would change how you see me. Her voice cracked, and for the first time, I saw vulnerability instead of distance. What kinds of things? I asked gently. She took a deep breath. I grew up in a family where secrets were the norm. My parents fought constantly, and there was a lot of pain I didn't want Caleb or you to be caught up in. She paused, then added, I was afraid if you knew the truth, you wouldn't accept me. So when Caleb and I decided to get married quietly, it was partly to protect myself from that fear. I reached across the table and took her hand. Lena, no matter what your past is, you're part of this family now. But you have to let us in. We can't help if we don't know. Tears welled in her eyes. I want that too. I'm sorry for hiding things, for hurting you. That moment was fragile, like glass, but it was real. When I told Caleb about our talk, he looked relieved, as if a weight had lifted off his shoulders. We want you to be part of this, he said, voice steady but soft. We're ready to be open now. It wasn't an instant fix. The distance that had grown between us would take time to heal. But for the first time since the secret wedding, I felt a spark of hope. A week later, Caleb and Lena invited me to dinner, a simple meal at their apartment, with homemade lasagna and fresh bread. It wasn't about the food, though. It was about being together. During dinner, Lena shared stories about her childhood, not the painful parts, but the moments of resilience and hope. Caleb listened, his hand resting gently on hers. I listened too, opening a door I hadn't known existed. By the end of the evening, I felt something shift inside me. A softening, a willingness to forgive and understand. That night, as I walked home, the air was crisp, the stars clear above. I thought about family, how it isn't always perfect, sometimes fractured by secrets and pain, but still worth fighting for. And I wondered, maybe the secret wedding wasn't the betrayal I first thought it was. Maybe it was a call for acceptance, a step toward healing for all of us. A few days after that dinner, I felt lighter, more hopeful. But life has a way of pulling you back into the storm just when you think the skies are clearing. I was about to learn that Lena's past was more complicated than I had imagined, and that the secret wedding was only the beginning of what had been hidden from me. It started with a phone call late one evening. The soft chime startled me as I was folding laundry in the living room. The number was unfamiliar, but something made me answer. "Hello?" I said cautiously. "Mrs. Walters?" The voice was hesitant, polite, but strained. "My name is Karen. I'm Lena's aunt." My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't known Lena had close family nearby. "Hello, Karen. Is everything all right?" There was a pause. "I'm sorry to call so late. I just wanted to talk about Lena and Caleb." Something in her voice made me sit down immediately. Karen went on to explain that Lena's family history was tangled with more than just childhood hardships. There had been years of estrangement, misunderstandings, and a long-held secret about Lena's real identity. One that Caleb and Lena hadn't fully shared with me or anyone else. She gently revealed that Lena's birth name wasn't Lena at all. She had changed it years ago after running away from a difficult situation. The wedding was as much a new beginning for her as it was a union with Caleb. I felt like the ground was shifting under me once again. This wasn't just about a secret wedding, it was about a hidden past. About who Lena really was, and what that meant for our family. The next day, I confronted Caleb. "Why didn't you tell me any of this? Why did you keep it all a secret?" His face tightened with guilt and frustration. "Mom, I wanted to protect you, protect Lena. We weren't ready to tell anyone. It wasn't about hiding from you. It was about waiting for the right time. But how am I supposed to trust you if you keep everything locked away?" I asked, voice trembling. He sighed deeply. "I understand why you're hurt. But please, give us some time. We're trying to figure this out too." I realized then that this wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about fear, about protection, about the messy, complicated nature of family. That night, I sat alone in my room, staring out the window at the dark sky. I thought about Lena, the woman I barely knew, with a past so complicated she felt like a stranger. But I also thought about Caleb, my son, caught between two worlds. The secret marriage had been their way of trying to start fresh, but in doing so, they had left me standing outside the door, wondering if I still belonged. Over the next few weeks, I reached out to Karen a few times. We talked quietly on the phone, sharing pieces of Lena's story, slowly weaving together a picture of the woman who had come into our lives like a quiet storm. With Karen's help, I began to see Lena not as a secret keeper or outsider, but as someone who had fought her own battles and was trying to build a future with my son. I also started writing in my journal again, putting down my fears, my hopes, and the tangled emotions I was trying to sort out. It wasn't easy. Some days, the hurt felt fresh and sharp. Other days, I felt a flicker of understanding, a chance for forgiveness. One afternoon, Lena came to visit me at the house. She brought a bouquet of wildflowers, her favorite, and sat down with me on the porch swing. "I want you to know I never meant to hurt you," she said softly. "I was scared of losing Caleb, and I was scared of losing you too." I looked at her, feeling the truth in her eyes. "I want us to be family, Lena, but it's going to take time." She nodded, squeezing my hand gently. In that moment, I realized that family isn't always perfect. Sometimes it's messy, painful, and full of secrets. But it's also about trying to understand, to forgive, and to love, despite everything. The tension between us hadn't disappeared overnight, but something had shifted, a fragile truce, built on the shared desire to heal, rather than tear each other down. I knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There were still many questions, many moments of doubt, but I also saw a glimmer of hope. One morning, I woke to a message from Caleb. "Mom, can we talk? I want to clear the air." I swallowed the knot in my throat and agreed. That afternoon, Caleb came over. We sat in the living room, sunlight pouring through the windows, casting long shadows across the floor. He looked serious but determined. "I know I've hurt you," he began, his voice steady but soft. "Keeping the wedding and Lena's past from you was wrong. I thought I was protecting everyone, but I see now that it just made things worse." I nodded, my heart aching for the son I'd raised, the son I still loved fiercely. Lena and I have been through a lot, he continued. She's not just hiding her past. She's trying to build a new one with me. We need your support, even if it takes time. I reached out, taking his hand in mine. I want to support you both. I want to be part of this family. But healing isn't a straight line. Soon after that conversation, I noticed whispers and sideways glances from neighbors and distant relatives. Word had spread about the secret wedding and Lena's hidden past. Some looked at me with sympathy, others with judgment. One afternoon, I overheard a conversation at the grocery store, someone saying, "They kept it all from Mrs. Walters. That daughter-in-law must be trouble." It stung deeply, but I reminded myself that gossip is part of life, especially in small towns. Determined to stand by my family, I invited a few close neighbors to a small dinner at my house. It wasn't a grand event, but it was a chance to tell our story in our own words, to show that family isn't about secrets but about acceptance. Lena cooked a simple but delicious meal. Caleb and I shared pieces of our journey, the mistakes, the fear, and the hope for a new beginning. Slowly, the walls of judgment began to crumble. I saw understanding flicker in their eyes, and I felt a quiet pride in my son and daughter-in-law for their courage. At home, the atmosphere grew warmer. Lena started opening up more, sharing her favorite songs, her hopes for the future, even stories about her childhood joys. I learned to listen without judgment, to see beyond the surface. One evening, as we sat by the fireplace, Lena handed me a small, wrapped box. "What's this?" I asked. "Open it." She smiled softly. Inside was a delicate silver necklace, a simple pendant shaped like a leaf. "It's for new beginnings," she said. "For all of us." I felt tears prick my eyes. It was more than a gift. It was a symbol of trust, of the fragile but growing bond between us. The journey wasn't without setbacks. There were moments when old wounds flared, when misunderstandings led to silence. But with every challenge, we learned a little more about patience and forgiveness. I came to understand that family isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, again and again, even when it's hard. As the weeks passed, the secret of Caleb and Lena's wedding began to spread beyond our little circle. It reached distant relatives, old friends, and even some people at Caleb's workplace. At first, I feared the worst whispers of scandal, judgment, maybe even rejection. But something unexpected happened. When the truth came out, it wasn't met with cruelty. Instead, many people expressed surprise, then empathy. I think deep down, everyone understands what it means to be vulnerable, to make mistakes, and to want a fresh start. One afternoon, I received a call from my sister, who had been hesitant about Lena from the start. "I've been thinking a lot," she said. "Maybe I judged too quickly. Maybe we all did. It's time to let go of grudges." That simple admission felt like a balm. Family healing was beginning outside my own home. At Caleb's office, Lena's courage became evident. When colleagues asked about their marriage, she spoke honestly, without shame or apology. She shared some of her past, but focused on who she was now, a woman committed to Caleb and their future. I watched from afar, proud of the strength it took for her to step into the light. One Sunday afternoon, we had a family gathering in our backyard. The air was crisp, the smell of grilled vegetables and fresh herbs filling the space. Caleb and Lena stood side by side, smiling genuinely, no longer hiding. I looked around at the faces of friends and family, some hesitant, some warm, all present. For the first time in months, I felt peace. The secret wedding that had once felt like a betrayal had become a catalyst for truth, connection, and growth. Of course, not everyone understood or accepted us immediately. Some relationships remained strained, but that's part of the journey, the slow, imperfect process of healing. What matters most is that we chose to face the truth, together. Healing, I learned, doesn't come wrapped in neat packages. It's a slow, sometimes painful process, like a garden that needs tending through storms and sunshine alike. In the weeks that followed the family gathering, I found myself changing too. I was learning to let go of old expectations, to embrace uncertainty, and most importantly, to open my heart wider than I ever thought possible. Caleb and Lena grew closer, their relationship stronger for having faced the storm together. Lena, once guarded and hesitant, began to let her guard down more and more around me. We shared quiet moments over coffee, exchanged small smiles, and sometimes even laughter. One rainy afternoon, Lena surprised me by inviting me to help her in the flower shop. The scent of soil and fresh blooms was calming, a new world I hadn't known before. As we worked side by side, planting and arranging, we talked about dreams, fears, and the family we were all trying to build. At that moment, the past didn't seem quite so heavy. I also began focusing on myself, journaling my feelings, reconnecting with old friends, and rediscovering hobbies I'd set aside. The emotional weight I'd carried for months was slowly lifting. There were still hard days, moments when old wounds would ache, but they no longer defined me. One evening, as I sat by the window watching the sunset paint the sky, I reflected on everything we'd been through. Family, I realized, isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, loving despite flaws, and choosing connection over isolation. Lena and Caleb's secret wedding had shaken my world. It forced me to confront my fears, my judgments, and my capacity to forgive. And in the end, it brought us closer, imperfect, but united. Thank you for listening to my story. It's been a journey filled with unexpected turns, hard truths, and moments of quiet healing. When I first found out about my son and Lena's secret wedding, I felt lost, like I was being pushed out of a family I thought I knew. But through pain and patience, I learned that sometimes love means accepting the imperfect, the messy, and the unknown. Family isn't just about blood or ceremonies. It's about trust, understanding, and the courage to keep trying, even when things feel broken. I want to ask you, have you ever been blindsided by someone you love? How did you handle the pain and the silence that followed? Would you have done what I did? Or maybe something different? Please, share your thoughts in the comments. Your stories matter. If you found this story touching, consider subscribing to hear more real-life tales of heartbreak, betrayal, and healing. We're all navigating this complicated thing called family together. Remember, sometimes the hardest journeys bring the most beautiful growth. Thank you for being here.